Morning, sisters and brothers. I don't know about you, but I'm a bit dusty. Dustier than Tony Abbott's social views. Dustier than Jared Henderson's view of history. Look, I want to firstly acknowledge my comrades and brothers and sisters internationally. It was a remarkable night last night when you saw the Bookend brothers back at work. Kelty and Keating. Keating talking about, it's like a political poetry almost. And Bill sort of covered more territory than Burke and Wills in rediscovering all of those things that we know happened and actually reshaped our society and our labour movement. It's just wonderful. And there was a healing and a reconciliation going on last night, and that's what Labour is about. It's a wonderful, wonderful night and a great tribute to Jeff and Jed to put it together. See, I'm from a union that is international in aspect, and partly because we're dock workers, wharfies and seafarers, and we're exposed to the worst excesses of internationalism, as was, described yesterday with Chevron. Still are. That's the reality of our world. Shipping and seafarers, are on ships largely in the world, on ships registered in places like Liberia. I mean, you wouldn't go to Liberia for a bet. You certainly wouldn't go there for your honeymoon. But yet the 30% of the world's ships are registered in the joint, the rotten joint, and they're trading up and down the Australian coast. When Nelson Mandela was here, and I see Chocho was back, when I seen him yesterday, he was going out here on the back of a stretcher. You've come back better than ever, comrade. Today you're looking fantastic. Our brothers at ACTU who are over there know the importance of that solidarity, because it was blokes like Tassie Bull and Pat Garrity and the great leadership of my union, the wharfies and the seafarers in that days, that put the oil embargo on, that Nelson Mandela said was one of the defining moments of the fight against apartheid and tipped them over the edge. That's where we come from. That's our labour movement. Same with when they assassinated Allende. We didn't let one ship in and out of this joint from Chile without giving them the old thumb right up the blurter. And that was because of leadership like John Coombs that was there, and Tassie Bull and Pat Garrity and Elliot V. Elliott, great Jim Healy, people that knew that we were part of an international working class and that we had responsibilities to that class to be able to look after workers in our industry. That is the defining thing about Australian trade unionism and the defining thing about international unionism. And if we don't understand the total parameters of what's going on in Fiji, imagine those, half-pie gangsters and thugs saying that we're standing over them. That's a pot calling the kettle black. The reality with Fiji is that it is in our remit of responsibility. And it is part of an international responsibility. And it's just not a responsibility, it's a form of self-preservation. I'm now the international president of the ITF, 5.5 million workers. I went there for self-interest. I went there to protect my seafarers and my wharfies from all of the exposure to the exploitation of the big multinationals that run stevedoring. The shipping companies that decide to register their ships in Liberia and Panama and Mongolia. Mongolia hasn't even got a coastline. To why? To avoid taxation, to exploit crews. Where do those crews come from? They come out of our region, the Philippines. One of our determinations, as Ephraim knows, when we put together the Australian International Shipping Registration in this great piece of legislation, about heroic and historic piece of legislation going through the Parliament, is to have an international register so Australia, that relies, the fourth largest relier of ships in the world, can have an international register. There won't be many of my members on there. But what there will be, moving our cargoes to China, moving our cargoes to Korea, moving our cargoes to India, will be regional seafarers from Vanuatu, from Fiji, from South Pacific. You know what's going on in the Kiribati? They are going underwater so quickly, they are trying to negotiate an enormous piece of land off Fiji, because in 30 or 40 years they won't have an Indigenous community. It will be underwater. They're our responsibilities. And when we put together the shipping legislation, it wasn't just rhetoric and self-interest and all of those things that crikey.com was accusing us on, for crikey's sake, crikey. It was about getting people jobs in Vanuatu and in Fiji. It was about building on the transport links and the freight forwarding links. It's not lost on anyone here that Qantas owns 49% or 45% of Air Pacific, taking all the tourists backwards and forwards, surfing the waves of Fiji, being able to live off the largesse, of that population, while they have these stringent demands and this tremendously, appalling lack of governance and responsibility going on. That's our responsibility, to build a trade unionism that has planes that go from here to Fiji, that has ships that go from here to Fiji, that have people on those ships with real trade union rights. When we establish that international register to move the great pipeline and conveyor belt of commodities out of this country, it won't be Australian residents on those ships. It'll be our regional comrades on those ships, not coming here on 457s, not coming here on EMAs, going back into their own communities with real wealth and a capacity to build the communities and have the democracy that Fiji deserves. That's a vision for trade unionism. And if we don't think that we can meet the demands of our workers in all of the wonderful families, all the working men and women that we represent in this room, if we think we can represent the interests of those workers without tackling global capitalism, with its negligence, with its corruption, with its greed, with its determination to back Fiji or to ignore it, if we're not prepared to build a unionism, a pervasive unionism, it's no accident that Sharon's a woman, a progressive woman running the World Trade Union movement. That reflects our type of unionism. Susan Hopgood, David Carey, Joe De Bruyn, myself, we are going out and organising the international working class, because the international capitalist class is organising us. And if we don't do it, if we don't take our organising values, our democratic values, our reform values, all the hard lessons that we learn at Patrick's. We had ships here being loaded by scabs that had to go to LA, and the longshoremen in LA refused to discharge those scab cargoes, and they sent them back to Auckland, and the Auckland unionists discharged those containers, put them back on before the longshoremen in Los Angeles would take them off. That's solidarity. That is the message. When the Auckland dockers, the price you pay for that, the Auckland dockers are now locked out. They had their livelihood taken away. They've been replaced by contract labour, by non-union workers. There's no accident. This is not some sort of synchronicity. It's not a coincidence. That happens because of a determination to get out and change the world, to link, to network, to organise, to fight bureaucracy, to fight hierarchies, to fight Eurocentralism, and be able to take our values, Australian values, Pacific values, trade union values, to take them into the environment, to go and challenge the boss on governance, to challenge the financial system, to build an international workers' capital that is, as they say in South Africa, the proper way, the third way, the way for all and just not the few. That's internationalism and that's trade unionism. That's why you're here, and you will be going away with us today, comrades, and particularly with you, Felix, to Fiji. Thank you very much.